Hello everyone, thank you for joining us for our weekly deep dive into our Moses series, Moses Out of Egypt. Last week, my sermon was over the burning bush and Moses' exit out of Egypt and the burning bush and his call from God back to Egypt. I want to focus on, in this deeper dive, a small portion of that passage, Exodus 2, 23 and 24, where God remembers his covenant with Abraham. If you're unfamiliar with the covenant with Abraham, Genesis 17 mentions this covenant that God makes with Abraham and his descendants. All right, God says that I will be with your descendants and your descendants will be with me. He makes this intimate relationship between the people of Israel and God himself. Now the word remember, the Hebrew word for remember is zakar. That is mentioned over 240 times throughout Scripture. And rather than this remembered like, oh, I forgot this and then it comes back to me and I remember, it's more of this, the truer definition would be to honor or to continually recall this promise or commitment that you made with someone. Exodus 2, 23 through 24 reads, "During those many days, the king of Egypt died, and the people of Israel groaned because of their slavery and cried out for help. Their cry for rescue from slavery came up to God, and God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob." This term for remember does not mean that God simply forgot his covenant with Abraham. God is not a forgetful God. We know that God is faithful in all of his commitments and his promises. He is simply recalling his commitment back with Abraham. Think of like a thought bubble that pops up above God, and he thinks back and plays that flashback back in his head, with the graceful harp music, if you will. We know that God is steadfast in his love and his faithfulness with us. But what can we learn from God's faithfulness throughout this act? How often do we truly forget about our commitments with people around us? We dishonor them whenever we forget promises or commitments. Matthew 5:37, Jesus says, "Let your yes be yes and your no's be no. Anything beyond this is considered evil." We are called by God to be faithful in our promises, no matter how big or small, with people around us. This week, as you consider your own commitments with people around you, maybe it's your kids, your spouse, your boss, or even just your friends. Maybe write them a text saying, "Hey, I haven't forgotten about this commitment, this promise that I have made to you." It'll go a long way for them simply knowing that you haven't forgotten about it, that you are continually recalling this commitment that you have made with them. Thanks for tuning in. If you missed last week's sermon, my sermon on the burning bush, you can go to this link and watch it. Thanks for tuning in.